similarities. By the way, you're not being tested on most of this, but since I have it, I'm going to point out some things that we see.
That's a real brain.
This is a real brain, and the white protective covering you see is the most superficial meninge. It's called the dura mater, and I love that name because it's Latin. Does anyone know what it could be Latin for, dura mater?
Dermal is...
Dura.
Dura is under, deep, like the skin, right?
Dura mater is Latin for tough mother. I like it. It's this tough covering of the brain. All right? And you guys have probably heard of meningitis, right? That's an inflammation of the meninges of the brain or the spinal cord. So the spinal cord has the same covering.
So, but how long has she been done for?
I don't know that because this brain is preserved, so it could have been preserved for years. I don't know. So you got to remove the dura mater in order to see the surface of the brain, and that takes just a couple minutes. All right, so one thing that's going to happen when I remove the dura mater is I'm going to remove the pituitary. So I just want to orient you guys. This is the front of the brain. This is the back because I see the little brain, the cerebellum. So if you're looking at the front right now, eyeballs are out here. Right at the very base of the brain is the pituitary gland. It's this, see that little circle, almost looks like a little P? That's that master gland of the endocrine system that hangs off of the hypothalamus like that. So sometimes I can keep the pituitary intact, but under pressure, it's probably going to come off, which is okay for us. All right, so we get rid of this dura mater. All right. And see, the pituitary did come off with it. All right, that's the pituitary there. It would be hanging right down here. So now, almost all of this that I'm touching is this cerebrum, right? The highest level of information processing. So when we become aware of any of the senses, general or special, they have to reach the cerebrum. And it's bumpy, right? Because there are gyri, the hills, and the little indentations, the sulci. People often call the gyri and sulci like hills and valleys. And the sulci, the little valleys, separate the different lobes of the cerebral cortex. The cortex is the outermost part, so I'm touching the cerebral cortex. So you have the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and in the back, right here, the occipital lobe, my favorite because that's where we find visual cortex. While we're looking at the back, this is the cerebellum, right? So if we want to see some details of the diencephalon, we're going to have to cut our brain, right? So what I'm going to do, this is front, this is back, this is left and right hemispheres, so I should use my correct anatomical terms, right? Ventral, dorsal, medial, lateral. I'm going to make a mid-sagittal section, which means I'm going to cut it right down the middle and open up, and hopefully it'll look like your model. We'll be able to see, if we're lucky, if I do a good job, we'll be able to see the thalamus and hypothalamus, hopefully. Ah, look at this, right? So, this, here, you want a better picture? Let me see, this might be a, no, this one's pretty good. So this kind of egg in the center of the brain here, let me move some of this, is the thalamus, and then just below it, the hypothalamus. Look at this beautiful cerebellum. Do you see the branching in the cerebellum? Mm-hmm. This white matter is axons, all right? And the gray matter is cell bodies. So that's a real good example of the real difference between white and gray matter. I like this name too. The branching in the cerebellum is called the arbor vitae. You know what that means? Tree of life, arbor vitae. It kind of looks like a tree, and it's Latin, yeah. This is another good example of white matter. See how bright white that is? Mm-hmm. That's the corpus callosum. So it's that bundle of axons that connects the left and the right sides of the brain, the left and the right hemispheres. So it's another great example of white matter. But I think I've pointed out just about everything you have to know. If I put the brain back together, right, this is your brain stem. So you can easily see this bump is the cerebellum's on the dorsal surface. So the bump, the pons is on the ventral. So the pons, medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord would be down here. I think that's probably, those are the best things to see. Just since you can see it right here, this is part of the olfactory nerve. That's one of the cranial nerves. This actually carries smell information from your nose, from the sheep's nose. So
So the